Hello and welcome to my watch reviews, and I thought today that I'd shine a light on my trio of vintage Ricoh watches. Now this is the same Ricoh that made all the electronics like calculators, cameras, photocopiers, that sort of thing. They even until fairly recently sponsored my local football stadium here in Coventry, the Ricoh Arena, as we still know it to this day, despite it not being called that anymore. Now, I like Japanese watches. I like the more unusual things. I think these are really interesting watches to buy. You can buy them for not a lot of money, and they're pretty underrated. So in this video, I won't really go into the history. There is a great video done by Illuminating Watches, which I'll leave a link to above. We're just going to go through each one of these individually. We're going to start with the red one because that one's been on my main channel recently as I restored that from a non-working movement. So sit back and enjoy this video. So I'm going to start with the burgundy or red dial one. As you can see, it looks pretty charming. This is how it came to me. It was all scuffed and scratched. I got it from a local watch fair. I think I paid about 30 UK pounds and it wasn't running very well. I bought it really in mind to make a restoration video on the main channel, which I've done. There's a two-parter. I'm going to leave some links above and down in the description. This had got an absolutely crazy movement in it, so it was definitely worth making a film and shining again the light on Ricoh watches. And here's the finished watch. So of course the restoration was successful because the watch is now running, but I really do recommend you go and watch them because it was just absolutely crazy movement. So this is a typical 70s Japanese watch, if you like. I do collect a lot of Seiko. I've got some Orient, I've got some Citizen, and now I've got some Ricoh as well, and they all have this, it's hard to explain, but it's just got a flavour. This one is quite interesting in itself. It's got that nice black chapter ring, which has got some lume markers on it. It's also got lume markers on the dial there as well. Now the lume has long gone, and it is safe. It's not radium lume. I don't think anything in the 70s used radium. It was being outlawed by that point. The thing that catches your eye the most on this watch, of course, is that faceted crystal. This is again typical 70s. I've got it on loads of Seikos. I really wish somebody would reintroduce them. I'm sure they're quite difficult to make nowadays, but they do add a lot of interest to the dial, especially, certainly from every different angle. What was so unique about this particular faceted crystal is that the facets are on the inside and it's an acrylic. So the top dome, really easy to buff out with a bit of sandpaper, again, like some wet and dry, fine wet and dry, and then some poly watch came up a treat. And it's very unusual to see that because most of them are hard lex, so they do get chipped and scuffed. You can't polish that out, and finding replacements, which I have done for some of my personal collection, become very expensive. If you'd like to see a very small video of all of my faceted crystal watches, then leave a comment below and I will make that happen. But it is very 70s, very typical, but really interesting all the same. What I also like about this watch in particular is that colour of the dial. I think it's probably what caught my eye to start with. You know, it's a deep burgundy reddish colour. I don't think I've got anything like that at all. I really liked the indices as well because they're so strangely shaped, but it gives it so much interest, and you can't stop looking at this dial, especially from all the different angles because of the reflections of the crystals. And then you've got that interesting sort of short lugs, so it tries to hide a strap, or in this case I've put a mesh bracelet on there. The watch itself, it's got quite interesting dimensions for its age. So it's 37 millimeters in diameter, if you call it a diameter. It's not quite round, this one. It is 12.2 millimeters thick, and it's only 40 millimeters lug to lug. Strangely, the lug width is 20 mil, which is really unusual of a watch of this age. They're normally 18 mil, some Seikos are 90 mil. It's difficult, very unusual to see a 20 millimeters. You might notice as well on the side there is a little button, and that button is to quick set the date, which is quite handy. Caused me a lot of struggles again, just trying to fit that particular part. Had a lethal spring that, yes, needed a bit of persuasion and a bit of bravery to fit as well. Here's just a couple of photos of the strip down of the movement. It's very interesting. You can see here that's the keyless works sort of on the bottom there. This was the top plate, and that was all to do with the automatic works before you could even get to the train. And then it had that really interesting pallet fork. So here it is on my 7-inch wrist and on a mesh bracelet. I couldn't really find something suiting for it, but it gives you a sense of size for a vintage watch. That red dial is definitely very striking. So leave a comment below, let me know what you think of this watch. And I'll end this watch on a sort of before and after shot. So here we go. We can see it as I bought it. It was partially running, a little bit sticky here and there, and then it'll now fade to how it looks after it's been done. And honestly, just a polish to the crystal and a little light polishing to the case was all that was required, cosmetically at least, to make it look so much better. Right, onwards and upwards. We're now going to discuss the grey one. Okay, let's see what you think of this one. This was my first ever Ricoh, bought back in 2018. I was still new to watchmaking at that point, and all I could do was case finishing, which is what I did on this. I replaced a crystal and refinished all the case and polished the bezel up. Just look at that dial, isn't it incredible? A little bit of texture there. And then you get this as the finished result. I was absolutely super happy with my achievements back then. I mean, in 2018 I'd only been doing or getting into watch tinkering for about 2 years, so still pretty fresh and new. This one was great. Got some graining or brushed finish on the case top there with the polished bezel, but it was a very cheap watch. I think from records this cost me about 10 to 15 UK pounds, and it was running. I've still not touched the movement at all, and what drew me to it, of course, I think you can all see, it's those absolutely crazy indices. They are, I've never seen anything like it. I don't even know how to describe them really. They're just utterly bonkers, but it kind of works, doesn't it? It's really unusual. I like the way the 12 and the 6 are sort of 3 bars vertically and the rest are 2 bars horizontally. Another thing that I especially like on this one as well is that it's got a day and a date separate windows on either side of the movement. Again, I've seen this on many Seikos and other watches previous to that, but I really do enjoy the look of this one, along with the grey dial with the slight texturing, for want of a better word. I matched it with this grey strap as well. Thought it was a good combination. Now this one has very similar, if not the same movement. They're quite hard to decipher, the movements in Ricoh watches. They all follow the same sort of pattern, and there's only really 2 or 3 main variants, of which this is one of them. So you have that separate button on the side again to change the time. They're all automatic. This one's an automatic. It's also hand winding, and I guess that's also the charm. Something very inexpensive. You've got lots of extra features. You don't get hand winding in many 70s Seikos, for instance. So they were a bit of a step up in that regard. Ricoh were also in-house manufacturers, so they made their movements in entirety, which is very commendable. Even though, as I said on the previous watch, their movements are absolutely utterly bonkers. So what is this one like on the wrist? Well, let's put a shot up now and you can see that there on my 7-inch wrist. It's quite an unusual shape. It's almost an oval shape to the watch, and that will then of course lead me to tell you the sizing, because again we are at 37.3 diameter. The length from lug to lug is just that little bit longer at 42.5. and then it's 12.5 millimeters thick. The lugs on this one are more respectable 18 mil in width, so a fairly decent size again for a vintage and a quite an unusual case shape, I think. I'll never get rid of this one. It's been in the collections all that time. I don't wear it all that often, but I still enjoy looking at it. And again, looking at the dial, talking to you in this review, I still like it. I even like the fact that the hands match those indices as well. So a very charming watch that doesn't cost any money and gives me enormous satisfaction. So again, leave your comments below on this one. Tell me what you think of the grey one. Is this the better one out of the three for you? Who knows? With that then, let's go over to the green dial. Right then, my guess is most of you were drawn to this one when you saw the opening shot of the video. Green against gold always seems to be more eye-catching. This is a sort of faded green dial. You can see it's darker at the top than it is at the light. You've got amazingly interesting indices yet again. This is definitely a trait of Ricoh. Very attractive at the same time, or eye-catching. Loom pips right on the dial at the end again. Very similar to the first one. Loom, sadly again, is long gone. What also makes this very interesting, of course, is that case shape. I mean, I don't even know what shape you would actually call it. It's almost close to being a coffin shape. I don't know. But it's very unusual, and that's what catches my eye. My other channel is called My Retro Watches, and the reason it's called that is because back in 2016 when I started it all, that's all I was collecting was crazy watches like this, or retro looking interesting watches. Obviously I've progressed a lot since then in what I like and don't like. Now this one I paid £30 for, and I bought it only in this year 2023. Saw it come up on eBay and I just snapped it straight up. I thought it looked like it was in really good condition, but once I received it I realized that it is in fairly good condition, but the case has been refinished. Somebody's done the high polishing, they've done the finishing of the ground finish, if you like, or the linear finish on the top. They've done it to a pretty good standard, not quite my standard for me personally, but I do like it. But what the problem was is the hands were not loomed, which made me take the movement out of the case, and then that's when you saw this photo here, where you can see the dial is an absolute and utter disaster. There's a lot of bubbling on the lacquer. A lot of the paint has come off, and quite clearly this watch is in very rough condition. Someone's polished the case, polished the crystal, put it back in and made it look good. And without trying to chastise an entire nation, this is likely to have come from India. There is a lot of Ricoh watches in India, and a lot of the ones on eBay come from India too. And my guess is someone's bought it there for very cheap money, got it back to the UK, messed around with it, either sold it to try and make a profit, or have just sold it because they didn't want it anymore. And I bought it on the basis that it looked alright. I've since reloomed the hands to make it look a bit more respectable, and in the case and on the wrist you really can't tell. It's only obviously once it's a real close inspection. So I was being a little bit disappointed by that dial, if the truth be told, and as a result I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this watch, whether I'm going to keep it or whether I'm going to look for a better version. I'm just not sure. Now I fitted the bracelet to match. I think it looks quite good on that one. Here it is, of course, on the wrist. You can get to see that really interesting shape, because it is very, very interesting. Now, of course, sizing. The widest point, so those widest two shoulders, are 37mm, just like the rest of them. And I guess if you wanted to say the narrowest point, which is down by the lugs, is more like 24, 25. The lug to lug on this one is only 39mm, so very short watch. and 11.7 millimeters in thickness. So small overall, to be truthful. There we go. So a real eclectic set of Ricohs you've just seen there. Do you enjoy this green one? Is this still your favourite? Again, leave the comments below. I'm going to read them all, and I'll be replying to as many as I can. So we'll end where we started, with the shot of the 3 different watches. Again, tell me your favourites. Tell me if you own any Ricohs, whether you like them, whether you want to see more vintage watches from my collection on the channel. Of course, please hit the like button if you've enjoyed this one. Really going to help me. Leave your comments below. If this is the first time at your channel, consider subscribing for more. All those great stuff. I have a Facebook group as well, Retro and Vintage Watches and Restorations. I encourage you all to go and join that. Certainly if you are tinkering with the idea of tinkering with a watch, or want to learn a bit more about vintage watches, that is a great group to be part of. There's 12,000 of us in there, and there's room for many, many more. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you very soon in the next review. Bye for now.